Welcome back. Tonight, we will not be talking about kings or castles, knights or battles. Tonight, we are going somewhere quieter. This is not a story with a throne at the center. It has no banners, no horns, no songs of conquest. It is not about those who were remembered, but those who were forgotten. Close your eyes now. Let the noise of the world slip behind you. Let your breath soften. Let your shoulders loosen. Let yourself drift back into a time long ago, not into the light of history's spotlight, but into the shadow behind it. We're going to listen to a voice that was never written down. A voice that may have once belonged to a woman, or many women. A voice shaped not by what it said, but by all that it was never allowed to say. She has waited centuries for someone to hear her. And now, in this quiet hour, she speaks. You don't remember me, but I have always been here. Not as a person, not anymore, but as a feeling. A breath you hold, a whisper behind the curtain. You know me. I am regret. But I was a girl, once. I sat by a window with my hands in my lap. I folded linens until the skin cracked on my knuckles. I stirred pots, poured broth, lit candles. I watched other lives unfold like songs in the distance. Songs I was never invited to sing. No one asked what I wanted. No one asked if I dreamed of touching parchment, of learning letters, of hearing the ocean. My life was given to me the way bread is given to a servant, flat, silent, and without choice. I obeyed, because to obey was safety, and to disobey was not a story that ended gently. You would not have noticed me if you passed me on the road. I was not the one crowned with flowers or shrouded in prophecy. I was not a queen or a saint. I was simply expected. Expected to marry, expected to bear children, expected to nod and serve and shrink. And in the beginning, I did not resist. How could I? I had no words to describe what I felt, only a sense of hollowness that deepened year by year like water wearing away stone. They said I was lucky. That I had good hands, a good face, a good name, but no one ever asked if I had a good mind. When I asked questions, I was scolded. When I lingered too long with my thoughts, I was told to hurry. When I tried to speak, my voice faltered beneath the weight of what I wasn't allowed to say. I did not fall in love, not the way poets speak of, with thunder and fire and foolish joy. I was given to a man whose hands were dry and whose eyes were elsewhere. He did not hurt me, but he never really saw me. And over time I forgot what it was like to be seen. I remember the hours more than the days, the feeling of wool against my skin, the scrape of cold water on my wrists, the ache in my knees from kneeling too long at the altar. I was told to be grateful, and so I smiled, quietly, without teeth. But something inside me was fading, a kind of inner light that dimmed each time I said yes when I meant no, each time I stayed silent when I should have screamed. I do not come to you now with anger. That passed long ago. I come only with memory, and with the soft ache of everything I never lived, because I wanted more. And I was never allowed to say so. And now, you hear me. Not as a woman, perhaps, but as a truth you recognize in your own quiet moments. I am the question that comes when the house is quiet. I am the feeling behind your ribs when you turn down the path you did not choose. I am not your enemy, but I am the voice you tried not to hear. And now, I will tell you the rest. They told me to be good, and I was. Good at kneading bread, good at biting my tongue. Good at disappearing in a room full of men who spoke over one another, never once wondering what silence knew that speech did not. I learned to move like wind around their needs, never too loud, never too soft, never too much, only enough to serve. My name was said often, but never with wonder, only with instruction. Bring the basin, close the shutters, mind your place. There were days I barely remembered the sound of my own laughter. It felt like something I had read about once in a story I was not allowed to finish. There were books in the manor, but they were not for me. I would pass them on high shelves, bound in leather and laced in dust, as though knowledge itself had been locked away, not for safekeeping, but for keeping out. And sometimes, when no one was watching, I would touch them, just touch them. My fingers brushing the spine, wondering what lives lived inside, what thoughts were captured there, and whether any of them sounded like mine. But I never opened them. The fear was not of punishment, it was of wanting more, of knowing, truly knowing that I could never have it. So I turned away, again and again, and they called it obedience. But it was mourning in slow motion, a funeral stretched over decades. For the self I buried each morning when I rose and tied my hair back. No one saw the cracks. Because I smiled in the right places. Because I birthed my children without a sound. Because I stood beside my husband and kept my eyes lowered. Because I remembered everyone's birthdays but forgot my own. And the years passed. They pass faster than you think. One day I was a girl, and then suddenly I was someone's mother, someone's wife, someone's shadow. I was called good. And for a while I believed it. But good never asked how I slept, or if I dreamed, or what it cost me to live a life that left no trace. And now, here I am. Not as a ghost, but as a mirror. You think of me only when the world quiets, when the children have gone to sleep, when the dinner is cold and uneaten, when the old dreams knock once more on the inside of your ribs. I don't come to punish you. I come to show you what happens when a soul is never asked who she is. Only told who she must be, because I was once real, flesh and breath and thought, and all I wanted was to matter. Not in history books, not in statues or songs, just in one room, to one person, long enough to be seen. Is that so dangerous? They feared what I might become if I was given words, and so they built walls from rules, and gates from scripture, and chains from tradition, and I carried those chains so long that I forgot they made a sound until now. Until you. There were moments, little ones, when the world almost made sense. Like when the wind moved through the fields in early spring, and I could pretend that I was free, just for a breath. Or when I held my child close at dusk, and for a flicker of time, I was not duty or obedience or expectation. I was just warmth. I was just love. And that was enough. Those moments saved me. You would not know it to look at me, but I carried rebellions beneath my ribs, not the kind with swords or banners, but quieter ones. Refusals too small for history to remember, like hiding a page torn from a book beneath my mattress, or adding too much thyme to the stew just because I liked the smell, or standing still in the courtyard a little too long, face turned up toward the sky, letting the sun touch me as if it had chosen me and me alone. Tiny acts of defiance in a world that never asked what I wanted. You may laugh at that. You may think it's sad. But when no one lets you be big, even the smallest freedoms are sacred, and I held on to them the way a dying tree holds the last red leaf. Desperately. Tenderly, with everything I had left. Still, time does not wait. And it took everything eventually. My skin softened, my voice quieted, the world grew dim around the edges, and the names I once answered to no longer fit quite right. I became something else, not quite forgotten, but no longer seen. The girl I had once been lived only in the creases of my hands, in the rhythm of a song I hummed without realizing, in the way I still looked out the window, hoping for something I could no longer name. And now I speak to you not as a memory, but as a lesson wrapped in softness. Because I see you. You, the one who wonders if your life has drifted too far from what you once imagined. You, who gave so much of yourself to others that you forgot what it felt like to be whole. You, who silences your dreams with the same lullabies you use to silence your fears. You are not alone. You never were. I walked this path long before you, and I left breadcrumbs, not in books, not in portraits, but in the ache you feel when your reflection looks like a stranger, in the quiet panic that lives beneath your perfectly kept life, in the questions you whisper when the night is kind enough to listen. I am not here to haunt you. I am here to remind you that you have a choice, the one I never did. Let that truth settle into your bones like fire in winter. Let it warm you. Let it wake you. It is not too late for you, even if the years feel heavy, even if you've worn a mask so long you've forgotten what your face looks like beneath it, even if you've walked the same narrow path for so long the idea of turning seems impossible. It is not too late. I was made to believe that a woman's purpose was to disappear into the lives of others, to be useful, to be quiet, to be kind, even when it hurt, especially when it hurt. But kindness without choice is not kindness. It is erasure, dressed in silk. I want you to be kind, but also loud, also curious, also wild, because I never got to be. I was taught that curiosity was dangerous, that longing was selfish, that wanting more was a sin. But you are allowed to want. Want the book, want the solitude, want the laughter that fills a room and doesn't ask permission, want the life that belongs only to you. You don't owe anyone your silence. I was praised for mine. but no one ever noticed how deeply it bruised me. There is a myth that good women endure, that they fold their pain into neat corners and tuck it beneath the bed, that they carry the weight of the world without ever asking for help. But I want something else for you. I want you to drop the weight. Let it fall like a stone into a well. Let the sound echo. Let it be heard, because your voice matters. Even if it shakes, even if it rises at the wrong time, even if no one claps. Speak anyway. I once waited for permission to speak, but it never came. Not from the priest, not from my husband, not even from the mirror. And so I died with words still stuck in my throat. Let that be my gift to you, the truth of what I missed, so you do not have to miss it too. Do not make yourself small. The world will not thank you for it. It will simply forget you, and you were never meant to be forgotten. I know what it's like to be good, to be useful, to be what everyone needs, but I never knew what it was like to be what I needed. That is what I want for you now. Not perfection, not obedience, not sacrifice, but wholeness, joy, wonder, mess and music and mornings without guilt. Say yes when you mean yes. Say no without apology. Let someone see you. All of you, even the parts you were taught to hide. And if you do not know how, that's okay. Start small. A deep breath before you speak. A choice that is just for you. A moment of stillness where you ask, what do I want? That question once burned in me like a fever, and I buried it again and again beneath duty, fear, and the ticking of the church bell. But you are not buried yet. You are still blooming, even if it's quiet, even if no one sees. And that is enough. For now, just begin. I will not follow you. Not because I do not care, but because I trust you now. You have heard me. And that is all I ever truly wanted, to be known. Not by many, just by one. One person who would not flinch at my sorrow, who would not turn away from the truth of what I lost. And now you carry it. Not as a weight, but as a thread. A delicate golden thread woven into the fabric of your life. A reminder that even silence speaks, that even stillness remembers, that even regret can bloom into beauty when it is heard with an open heart. I do not ask you to undo the past. I ask only that you honor it. Not with shame, but with courage. Live as I could not. Speak where I stayed silent. Run where I stood still. Choose where I was given no choice. Let your laughter be loud and without apology. Let your joy be messy, unplanned, defiant in its brightness. Let your life be wide. I was the pause before the sentence. You are the sentence. I was the breath held in fear. You are the exhale in freedom. Do not wait for permission. Do not seek to be small. You were never meant to be anything but fully, wildly, completely alive. And when the world tries to hush you, as it once hushed me, remember this: I am not your shadow, I am your proof. That silence has a story. That a forgotten girl once reached through time just to whisper, don't forget yourself. And now I fade, not with bitterness, but with grace, because you are here. And I am no longer alone. It's strange, the things you remember near the end. Not the celebrations or the sermons, but the smaller things, the things no one else noticed. The sound of the firewood popping in the hearth on winter mornings, the way the wool soaked through your fingers when it was wet and cold, the way your feet ached after a long day standing in the fields, but you kept going anyway, because stopping wasn't allowed. I remember the shape of my days. They all looked the same. Wake before light, tend to the bread, the animals, the children. Eat if there was something left. Pray if there was time. Work again until darkness came. We didn't call it hardship, we called it life. And maybe that's why the years passed so fast. Not because they were easy, but because they were full. Full of things that never felt like mine. The house was never mine, the land wasn't mine, even the clothes on my back belonged to my husband's name. But I mended them, washed them, folded them with hands that cracked in the cold and bled from the work. There's no bitterness in me now. Only the wish that I'd let myself be a person before I tried so hard to be a good wife, a good daughter, a good woman. We were praised for being quiet, rewarded for being tired, loved for being needed, but rarely for being known. And so when people speak of history, they don't speak of us. They name the kings, the wars, the walls, but they don't name the ones who carried water in the dark while pregnant and alone. They don't speak of the women who stayed behind while the songs were sung for men. They don't tell you that I once stood by the well, hands raw and frozen, and whispered to the sky, please. Let someone remember that I was here. I didn't need to be known, just remembered. That's all. Because a life like mine, ordinary, invisible, quiet, was still a life. And I hope wherever you are now, you can carry that truth with you, that even if no one sang your name, it still matters that you lived. My mother never spoke much, not about herself at least. She was always busy, her hands in motion, her eyes on the floor. She moved through the house like part of it, not the walls, the support beams, the things that held it all together but were never noticed unless they broke. I watched her closely, though I never told her that. I learned more from what she didn't say than from what she did. She taught me how to gut a fish before I learned how to write my own name. She showed me how to stretch one loaf into 3 meals, how to keep soup warm for a husband who might not return for hours. But there were no lessons about how to speak your mind, no guidance on what to do with sadness that stayed long after the chores were done. Her face always looked tired, but not because she was weak, because she was always carrying something heavy, something no one ever asked her to set down. I remember once I came in from the fields with dirt on my dress and tears in my eyes. I don't remember why I was crying, only that she looked at me and said, "We don't have time for that today." It wasn't cruel, it wasn't cold, it was true. And so I learned, sadness doesn't stop supper from needing to be made. Tears don't milk the cow, grief doesn't sweep the floor, so we tucked it away. All of us, folded into the corners of linen cupboards, pressed between the pages of our Bibles, buried beneath the herbs hanging from the beams. I don't blame her. She was doing what she was taught, what her mother did, and her mother before her. A line of women, all moving quietly through time, carrying things they never named. But just because they didn't name it doesn't mean it wasn't there. We carry more than what we hold in our hands. We carry glances, half-spoken prayers, fears whispered only in dreams. And I sometimes wonder, if one of us had stopped just once and said this isn't enough, would it have broken the chain? Or would it have made life harder? I don't know. I only know that I've tried to do one thing differently. I let my own daughter see me rest. Not often, but sometimes. When she was small, she once asked, "Are you allowed to sit when there's still washing to be done?" And I said yes, because someone had to say yes. Someone had to show her that we are not just hands. We are hearts, and we're allowed to beat for something other than everyone else. She didn't understand it then. Maybe she still doesn't. But maybe one day, when her own hands are tired, she'll remember that I sat down once, and she'll let herself sit too. There was a chapel at the edge of our village, small, cold in winter, stone walls and a wooden door that never quite closed right. It smelled of wax and wet wool, and when the sun passed through the stained glass, the dust looked holy. I went every Sunday, sometimes more when there was cause. Funerals, christenings, fasting days. Not because I feared hell, though I was told I should, but because it was expected. It was what good women did, what wives and mothers did. I knelt because my mother had knelt. I crossed myself the way she did, quick and small, as though apologizing for the motion, and I listened. To the priest, to the bells, to the long Latin phrases I didn't understand but memorized all the same. He spoke of obedience, of suffering as virtue, of reward beyond this life, if only we endured with grace. And I wanted to believe that. I tried to believe that. Because belief was safer than doubt. Doubt made things harder. Doubt made you dangerous, especially if you were a woman. But sometimes when he spoke of sin, I wondered if it was really sin at all, or just living in a body no one asked to be born into. He said God made me for service, for labor, for quiet. But then I would leave the chapel and see a bird building her nest high in the trees, fierce and alive, and I would think, what if I was made for something more than obedience? What if God made me curious on purpose? I never said that aloud, but the thought stayed with me. It sat beside me as I scrubbed floors, as I bore children, as I listened to men speak of heaven, as though they'd been there and I hadn't. And I wondered, if I had been born a man, would I still be told to be silent, to be holy? Would anyone say my silence was sacred if I had a louder voice to begin with? Still, I prayed. Not with grand gestures, not with lit candles or practiced words, but in the way I placed a blanket over my sleeping child, in the way I looked up at the night sky and let the cold remind me I was still alive. In the way I buried my grief without a name and waited for it to rise again as something softer. That was my faith. Not the kind written in books, not the kind praised from pulpits, but real, worn, lived. And I think, if there is a God who sees, he saw me. He saw me rise when I didn't want to. He saw me feed others when I was hungry. He saw me stay gentle, even when the world forgot my name. Maybe that was enough. Maybe I was enough. They say women should be practical. That dreams are for poets. That stories are a luxury we can't afford. But I have always needed them. Not to escape life, but to keep breathing inside it. We didn't have books in my home, only one Bible, and it belonged to my husband's father. But we had stories, spoken, not written, passed down like recipes, stitched into conversation, whispered before sleep when the fire had turned to embers. There was one my aunt told me, when I was still small enough to believe anything was possible. She said there was once a woman who was born with a golden thread inside her. It glowed when she laughed and dimmed when she lied. She was poor, like all of us, but her thread kept her warm at night. It reminded her she had value, even when no one else saw it. But one day, a man noticed her light and told her it was unbecoming, that women should shine only when spoken to. So she wove her thread into a blanket and gave it to him, and he left. After that, the light never came back, but the warmth did. Because in the end, she had made something of herself no one could take. I never knew what the story meant, but I remembered it. And on days when I felt small, I would imagine a thread inside me too. Not gold, not glowing, but something no one else could see. I held on to that, while I stirred stew, while I walked the path to the well, while I stood at the edge of the fields and stared out at hills I would never be allowed to cross. I told myself small stories, about a woman who grew wings in the night, about a girl who slept in a barn and woke up with the voice of a bird, about a mother who sang a song so lovely that even the wind paused to hear it. No one knew. It was mine. In a life where so little belonged to me, my imagination became my home. It didn't change my chores. It didn't stop the aching in my back. But it gave me something to look for, a flicker of self that couldn't be wrung out with the laundry or trampled by the weight of expectation. And even now, as I speak to you across time, I hope you hear the story in my voice. Not the one they told me to repeat, but the one I built for myself, quietly in the dark corners of ordinary days. There was a forest near our village. Not far, close enough that you could see the tree line from the fields. Tall trunks, dark leaves, always rustling even when the wind was still. They told us not to go there, that wolves lived among the branches, that spirits tangled your feet if you wandered too deep, that good women stayed clear of wild places. I believed them at first. It was easier that way. Easier to obey than to wonder what might be waiting on the other side of fear. But sometimes, after the washing was done, after the animals fed, after the children were asleep, I would stand just outside the gate and look toward those trees and feel something rise in me I couldn't explain. Not a desire to run, not rebellion, just wonder. What did the moss feel like underfoot? What color were the berries that grew there? Was it really danger that lived in the woods? Or was it freedom they didn't want us to find? I never stepped beyond the edge. Not truly. I had too many reasons to stay, small ones, practical ones, like supper and safety and what the neighbors might say. But in my mind, I walked beneath those trees. I listened to the hush of the world where no one asked for anything except that I be alive. Sometimes I imagined building a shelter there, from branches and cloth, and sleeping without a name, without a role, without anyone needing me but the sky. Other times I pictured a path, just wide enough for one, that led to something new. Not better, not easier, just mine. I don't think I ever wanted to leave my life behind. I just wanted to know that I could have. That if I wanted to choose differently, the world would not collapse. That I could want something and not be punished for it. But that's not how it was for women like me. Wanting was dangerous, and so we didn't. We kept our eyes down, our hands full, our minds small. But inside, something always remained untamed. Maybe it was the forest in us, the part no one could cultivate, no matter how many rules they wrote, no matter how well we behaved. And now, as you listen to my voice, I want you to know, if you ever see a path, even just a little one, even if it's crooked and half hidden, you're allowed to walk it. You're allowed to wonder. You don't have to go far. You don't have to leave everything behind, but step outside the gate just once. Feel the air shift. Let the trees remind you that life was never meant to be lived entirely indoors. I couldn't go, but maybe you can. And that, to me, would be enough. Now the mornings come slower, the bones speak more than the mouth, and the days, they slip past like threads through a loom, quiet, steady, fraying at the ends. I do less now, not because I want to, but because the body asks for gentleness after a life of demand. I sit more than I stand, I listen more than I speak. And in the stillness, the memories return, not the big moments. I don't remember the harvests or the festivals as clearly as I remember the sound of my daughter's laughter the first time she saw her breath in the cold, or the warmth of a fresh loaf when the entire house still smelled like rising dough, or how the sun looked when it spilled across the floor while I was mending a tear in someone else's shirt. I think that's how memory works for women like me. We weren't given chapters, just fragments, soft as cloth, easy to lose, but impossible to truly forget. No one asked me for a record of my life. There are no paintings, no letters, no songs with my name in them, but my hands were part of 1,000 quiet miracles. Meals made, wounds tended, children soothed, clothes patched, fires lit in the dead of winter with fingers stiff from cold. They'll say I left no mark, but I did. You just have to look closely. In the way my daughter brushes her hair with care, in the way she cradles her child against her chest and hums a tune I used to hum without knowing it had meaning. In the way she lets herself sit, just for a moment before beginning the next task. I didn't change the world. I didn't write the rules. But I kept something alive, a thread, a rhythm, a kindness too small to measure but strong enough to last. And maybe that's all a life is in the end. Not the things we build for others to admire, but the things we preserve quietly, day after day, without asking to be seen. The seasons change now without my help. The fields grow and wither without my tending. The house still creaks in the wind, but I no longer rise to mend it. And yet, I am not gone. I live in the way the light lands on old stone, in the smell of bread baking, even if no one notices where it came from. In the hush of evening, when the world sighs before sleep. Sometimes I imagine someone walking through the village long after I'm gone and pausing at a window without knowing why. And maybe they'll feel something. A warmth, a memory they never made, a presence without a name. That will be me. Not haunting, not lingering. Just remembered, the way wind remembers the shape of leaves. You don't have to carry my sorrow. You don't have to rewrite history. But if just once you light a candle and let it burn without rushing, or you listen to someone without reaching for the right answer, or you stop to rest without earning it, then I will know you've heard me. Because that's all I ever wanted. Not praise, not monuments, just the small impossible thing of being known, of someone somewhere whispering she lived. She felt things she couldn't name. She loved deeply. She stayed kind, even when the world didn't give her reason to. And if you hear this now, let it be a comfort, not a weight. You are allowed to feel tired. You are allowed to want more. You are allowed to remember those who came before without becoming them. I walked so quietly through this life, you might have missed me. But now you know I was here. And if you ever feel small or unseen or aching in a way that has no words, just look to the fields, look to the trees, and know you're not alone. Someone else stood there once, hands folded, heart full, hoping someone someday would listen. You're listening now, and that means more than you'll ever know. And now the lamps are low, the wind has quieted, and even the moon seems to lean a little closer to listen. The house is still. The fields are dark, and in some small corner of time, a woman once folded her apron, set down her tools, and stepped out into the night to breathe. She looked up, not for answers, but for softness, for stillness, for the kind of silence that doesn't ask anything of you. That silence is here now. It has found you, just as it found her. So rest. There is no task waiting, no voice to answer, no one to impress, only the gentle knowing that someone lived before you, and that someone now listens within you. Let the warmth of her fire glow inside your chest. Let the rhythm of her footsteps slow your own. And if you close your eyes, you might hear her still, not in words but in feeling, like a breeze through old stone, like the echo of a name that never made it into books but lives on in breath. You are safe. You are seen. You are not alone. Sleep now, with the memory of a life stitched in silence, and the comfort of knowing that even the quietest voices can still be heard when the world is finally still. Good night, gentle soul. You're home now.